I ran it just like every single day, I did not change a thing of how I managed my business,
Yep.
nor my passion for it,
Yep.
nor my expectation, nor my quality, nor my integrity. For me, quality and my kids were more important than any amount of money,
A
you know?
100%.
So I didn't change. I managed my business the same way until the day of closing.
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Hey everyone, I hope your day's going great and welcome back to another episode of The Exit Whisperer. I'm so excited to be with you today and give you this story of this woman who has patience, persistence, and grit. Jennifer Vazquez. Let me just tell you something about Jennifer Vazquez, okay? She came back as a single mother from the brink, you guys. She was declared bankruptcy, had a failed business, was beyond stress, single mother, figured out how to finance and acquire her first childcare center, bought an existing childcare center, made it more profitable, figured out how to do seller financing so that it didn't totally make it impossible for her. I mean, you guys, she had declared bankruptcy. Credit is like a huge thing here. So figured out how to buy that one, made it profitable, bought another one, then bought a third one. This one was like a standalone build out, like big deal. Okay. And then figured out post COVID how to sell it. And the crazy thing is, she used EOS, which you guys should know. It's traction. Gino Wickman wrote this book, great book. And I think it's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a great system. Learns how to help you increase profitability. She learned how to do that in her own business, and now she teaches others to do the same. Man, she is awesome and a really inspiring story. And one of the things she talks about is why you should buy an existing business versus starting one from scratch. I'm a starter from scratcher, but she's a buyer, and it's pretty awesome. I mean, I found it very inspiring. I felt like I wanted to go out and buy a business right after that. It was nuts. So I can't wait for you guys to take a listen. Here you go. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carrie. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited to have you on because I really try and have varied types of businesses. And when I
Okay.
think about having an excellent, exciting exit, and then I think about the building of preschools, I don't know that I would normally connect those two together. And yet you did it and did it brilliantly. So I'm so excited to talk about
Yeah.
this. Really,
And
really.
mind you, I had no idea what I was doing when I bought my first location, had never been in education
Oh my
ever.
gosh.
Yeah.
All right, tell me about this. So how do you get started and talk to me about like buying a business and how that worked for you to start? Because I know you bought in eventually as you started the business.
My three transactions, two of them were similar and one of them was completely different. A lifelong entrepreneur. I had owned another business before, lost everything, reinvented myself after I lost everything. But, and I partnered up with two people, had a great business in the real estate and finance legal industry during the worst times of our, from my economic history that I can remember, right? Which
Yep.
was a 2007, 8, 9, 10. We
Yep.
did great, but I knew it wasn't going to last a long time. And since I had lost everything, Carrie, I was a single mom and didn't have financial help. My
Mm.
parents, I would help my parents out. So failure wasn't an option for me. So I said, okay, next, I reinvented myself, did great with that other business, but I knew it wasn't going to last very long because it was kind of like a wave. It was providing services that people needed at the time, saving their homes from modifications and whatnot. So I saved my money and I said, okay, next business I get, I want a business in the necessity, and I'm a necessity business. So I said, okay, or food or childcare. And I'm like, I don't like the food industry and I love kids. I said, okay, I'm going to buy a childcare. And I did. It was interesting because I was coming out of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
I was still coming out of bankruptcy because remember, I had lost it all and I had to file for bankruptcy to save my home is the only reason why I did it. So I just started Googling, preschools for sale, preschools for sale. And lo and behold, like it was really meant for me. The first two that I saw, I did not like. The third one, it was perfect. And it was like 10 blocks from my house, 2 minutes from my home. And I just ended up buying it. So I purchased an ongoing business. It had existed, let me see, for about 7 years, but it was barely making money.
I was going to ask you about that. When coming out of bankruptcy, how do you get the credit to be able to buy the business? Or is it that you just put a certain amount down, you saved up and put a certain amount down and that was okay? And it was seller financed like through
Yes. So I put 50% down payment.
Okay.
And the rest was seller finance with a balloon in 2 years.
Okay, so seller finance, for my audience, in case there's anyone who doesn't know, is it's paid out over time from the profits of the business. And then you have a couple of years to get it to where it needs to be in terms of profitability. And then you have the bigger balloon payment. But as you just mentioned, the business that you were buying didn't have a lot of profit at the time.
It didn't have a lot of profits. So I put 50% down payment and the other 50% was seller finance, meaning that the owners financed the business to me. So I would make payments to them. And then after interest only payments. And then after 2 years, I had to pay them the balance. And that ended up happening. It was a struggle because I was learning something new, but I put a lot of time and effort into it. With all my business background, I was able to make it very successful. And I said, okay, I'm ready for scaling. I'm ready. I want another one and I want another center. I want another center. I started visiting centers and there was one they were selling for almost $500,000 at the time.
Oof.
And I didn't have that kind of money to buy it outright. And I couldn't get a loan still because of my bankruptcy. It's like I have to be 4 years out after bankruptcy. They ended up selling it to somebody else, but it was really meant for me. So the way the world turns is so funny. Unfortunately, the new buyers, they ran it down to the ground and I knew the landlord of the building. So they called me, the current tenant at the time. So they sold it to somebody else.
Yes.
They hadn't paid their mortgage, their lease for about 5 or 6 months. And they called me and I said, listen, I'll pay you all your back rent that is due in cash, basically not in cash, but just outright.
Landlord, yep.
I'll buy it out. I'll pay all your back rent, sell it to me. And, I had a little bit of struggles because a prior owner got involved because they had a loan. It was all a hot mess, but I ended up buying the center. They had to close it down because they evicted. I tried to buy the current owner out. They didn't want to. Long story, because they owed money to the prior seller still, because the prior seller had given them.
They bought that $500,000 business. They're going to still own, right. They're going to owe that seller money.
Yeah, because the seller did seller financing. Right. Mm-hmm. So they ended up evicting the tenant and the landlord, I asked for 3 months, no rent. And in less than a year, I filled up the school. And then the third purchase, I filled up the school, doing great. I'm running one school. I had someone else running the other school, like great. She was doing a great job. And I'm like, okay, now I want a standalone. Now I want a standalone business. I want a standalone preschool. And it's funny because there was one school that I wanted standalone, beautiful, and it was very expensive. It was about $4 million at the 3.8.
And a standalone means it's in its own building, its own property, like
right.
Versus attached as part. Okay.
Versus being in like a strip mall.
Yep. Got it.
And so it's a standalone
space. Yep.
Right. Okay. It was a standalone building similar to like a bank. It's a standalone, structure. Yep. And I went to see the business and I said, okay, $3.8 million. I'm still, mind you, I still don't have the 4 years out of bankruptcy. Right. And I said, I knew it wasn't worth that amount of money. And I just started looking, Carrie. I didn't know how I was going to get the money. I knew I wanted to expand. I just started looking. But lo and behold, I was part of a mastermind group I would visit every quarter. And one of the members, she ended up meeting someone from the real estate investment trust fund that would buy buildings for them.
Yep.
Even invest money to do the build out and then lease it to them.
Oh, so they bought the building.
So I met the people, but that other building was just too expensive. So I started looking for another building. I met the REIT and they said, okay, you're vetted, go out and buy whatever you want, put a contract on it, and then we'll assign it. And I did that. And then the 3.8 building that I really, really liked, they also had a contract with a very big company there were franchises. Both these contracts fall through. This is like a year after I saw the building, or a year and a half. Both the contracts fall through. There was a hurricane they didn't want to extend. And my realtor says, I even cried, but I knew that the universe, there was something better out there for me. I just knew it in my heart. And then the realtor says, listen, I know this realtor, we've been friends for 30 years, that is selling this other business. And it was the same one.
Oh my gosh.
So
The same building
the same building. Yes. So this is like 2 years later when I first saw it. Like I get goosebumps saying the story because just the second location, all three of them, I think I manifested them. I really believe in manifestation. So I ended up getting the building, the business. I put the contract on the building. I assigned a contract to the REIT at closing, which is the real estate investment trust fund. They leased it back to me with an option to buy. I negotiated an option to buy after 10 years.
Very important. Very important. Okay.
So I ended up getting the business and the building for 2.6 or 2.7 million because they weren't making the same amount of money. They were putting everything on hold while they were on contract with the other buyer, and the financials weren't the same.
So the one that was listed at 3.8, you got for over $1 million less.
Yes.
Okay. And so that was purchased through the real estate investment trust. And then you had negotiated the option to buy. When you negotiated the option to buy, and I know this is super specific, but I know our audience is interested in this. When you negotiate the option to buy, is it at a fixed price or is it at the market price in 10 years?
The market price. Usually they don't negotiate that.
Yeah.
The real estate investment trust fund, usually they don't negotiate that.
It's like but do you have first right of refusal to buy?
I have first right of refusal, and it was at market price.
So you then partner with the REIT, you buy the building and the business for 2.8. They get the building, you get the business, you're building it. This is now your third location. The 3 locations, does it all become one preschool brand or did you keep them with separate brands?
So the first 2 was one brand, which was a Sunny Star Preschool. And then the third one, which is the building, was Born to Learn Preschool.
Okay.
And it was the first preschool in that city, in that area, Miami, in Doral, Florida.
Okay.
So I love the name, a lot more modern. So eventually what I was going to do, I rebranded Born to Learn. I invested a lot of money. I did construction. I rebranded the whole thing. I had branding guidelines. Like I had a branding booklet.
Yeah.
And then I was going to change the branding to the other 2 schools. I was completely going to rebrand those to the same name, but then COVID hit and that stopped. So I had to have 2 websites. It was all one company per se, but just with 2 different names.
So you buy the third location. Now you're out of bankruptcy for a little bit. You've financed this. You've figured out how to do it. How do you make sure that the businesses make money and are profitable? I mean, this must have been a huge risk for you to be able to dive into all of this and start out after this comeback from the last business.
Carrie, all 3 were risks. I put everything on the line all 3 times. I just bet on myself. The third one, I didn't finance it. The company, the real estate investment trust fund, they purchased it and then they leased it back to me. But the business was mine, the building was theirs. So I just had a new landlord.
Yeah.
Big part of my success, Carrie, since I wasn't an expert in the education field, I got the education that I needed. I got my certifications. I went to school. But what was most important is I joined an association in the childcare industry, where that was my mastermind group. It was over 300 owners that have been doing this for years. And I joined soon after I purchased my second location. I learned a lot, and I learned a lot on how to structure my finances. I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot about different things I can do in the business to add more money to the bottom line while maintaining super high quality, because I'm a very big high quality person. And they were making money. But once I bought the third location, which wasn't making money either, it was almost losing money. As a matter of fact, it was making a little bit of money. The second one was losing money because I had to start from scratch, but I made it profitable in less than a year. The third one was also making, but very little. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare because I was running the first location. My director was running the second location. But once I bought the third location, I had to extract myself and her. So I needed 3 new managers, pretty much. And that was very daunting. That was daunting. I didn't have systems in place. I didn't have processes in place. I was managing the business in a very reactive manner. I was making money, but I was working 16-hour days. So I was miserable. So I said, if I don't change the way I manage my business,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to scale. And I wanted to continue scaling. And then I said, I went to my group and they're like, hey, EOS is great. Traction EOS. I don't know if you've heard of Traction, the EOS methodology, Entrepreneurs Operating System.
Wickman. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I implemented it in my business and it changed everything. Carrie, I added 700% to the bottom line.
Wow.
I grew, I think it was top line, it was about 60%, but my staff turnover decreased. I was like 65% staff turnover. Average in the industry is about 30, 35. I reduced it to about 20, 25, even throughout COVID.
Wow. And that's all from implementing EOS or having a system that helps you manage your profit, your priorities, all of the stuff that needs to happen there.
It's a human energy management system.
Yeah.
And I got to the point, which is funny because I had done another course in the small business administration, and I had created kind of like a timeline, like a strategic plan, if you will.
Yeah.
And I totally forgot about it. And then years after, I find the booklet and it said, I have a central office. I have a central office. I have a regional director, kind of like an integrator, a COO, if you will. And I achieved that. And I had totally forgot about that booklet. And I achieved that. So I got to the point of managing my business off-site in a centralized location. And I had a centralized team in a central office. So we would manage the business from there. And because of all the systems and processes and dashboards and scorecards and all these bonus plans tied to metrics, we knew when the business was doing great or not. And I didn't have to go to my locations. I wouldn't go for months. And Carrie, I was so picky. Everything had to be perfect. And even managing the business from the centralized location, I knew what was perfect and what wasn't because of that. Yeah. And not only did it help me, but it empowered my team.
Yeah.
It grew my team. They became self-sufficient. I called them the captains of their ship. They were the captains of their ship.
So once you have the 3 locations and you have the central office and you're growing the profit, you're now starting to make real money. I assume that's like very exciting for you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the decision to sell. Like, how does I'm picturing, like, I hear all of this, like the things I hear from your story, I hear a lot of patience, like you waited for the building, you waited, all of these things kind of came to you after you had
not patience, it's persistence.
Well, next for me, I was going to say persistence and grit. It's like patience meets persistence. It's both. Yeah. And the grit that you have to push through it, it's amazing.
Thank you.
And so you get there. Now you've got this down to a science. You understand EOS.
Carrie, I got bored.
You got bored.
I was making a ton of money. My team was doing very well as well. They were making money, but I got bored because I had mastered it and it was just the same and the same. I'm a person that I need to achieve goals. So I said, okay, I'm gonna, start looking for my 4th location. And I was looking and looking and looking, and it has to be right. I don't just jump in. It has to be right. Same side. It has to face a certain direction.
Patience to find the right place and the persistence to go after it when you find it. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And then COVID hit. That was terrible. COVID was terrible. I had a lot of management turnover.
I mean, did the schools have to close? Did the schools?
No,
they were open.
They were open, but I had to completely pivot the business model. We had to learn contract tracing. It was just a nightmare. I can talk a whole nother hour of what I went through COVID. And it was like a domino effect, but also Murphy's Law. Everything happened at once.
Right.
So it was constantly. I have never worked so hard in my life like I did those days. I would literally get out of bed, sit in my desk. I would forget to brush my teeth. I would plug in, and by 2:00, I'm like, I haven't eaten. I haven't brushed my teeth.
Yes.
And in PJs until midnight and through the weekend, it was really, really hard. Luckily, I didn't, luckily everybody was help. I didn't have any health scare per se. It's just managing the business was crazy. But then thanks to EOS, on 2021, I have my best year ever. So I'm coming out, the schools are full again. I have a great team. What I call my dream team, my management team they were amazing. We built up the schools again, and I'm coming for air, and I'm still holding on expansion because I was just getting a breather.
Well, now you don't know. Yeah.
And then someone approaches me from my childcare group that had become a broker, and he said, "Hey, Jen, do you want to sell?" I'm like, "No, but what are you thinking?"
Right.
And we started conversations, and then I knew my number. I said, "Well, I will sell it, but this is my number." And we started talking, and they evaluated my financials. I was about 20%, about 16 to 18% away from the number that I wanted. Why? Because they get my EBITDA, and then we negotiated a multiple.
Yes.
But my multiple wasn't equating to the number that I wanted, but I knew my enrollment was just increasing over time. So when I negotiated my LOI, Carrie, I negotiated on the month right before closing. How do they do the math? They do the math on during those times, trailing 12 months.
Yes. They look
right?
at your
An average
month and the profit. Yeah.
An average of that, and then they multiply it towards the EBITDA, towards the multiple, the EBITDA towards the multiple, the average EBITDA of the last 12 months towards the multiple. Then I said, okay, but I want you to start counting the trailing 12 months from November.
Yeah.
Because every month I was just going up and up and up. Carrie, I surpassed my goal.
Yeah.
But in the LOI, there was no cap price. But in their mind, they thought that they were going to give me an earnout. They thought I was not going to exceed the amount. So unfortunately, I got the amount that I wanted, not a penny more or a penny less. But the good thing is that I didn't have an earnout, which they don't do business that way. But there was a lot of struggles throughout the process.
Typically in your space, do they have earnouts, or is it not usual if someone's buying a childcare business? Of course, you wouldn't have bought the other ones. You had seller finance. So those are earnouts, basically. It's like they have to hit targets to be able to finance the rest. So they typically have an earnout?
No, I didn't have earnouts. I just had seller financing, a flat rate.
So it didn't matter when you bought the business. It didn't matter. If you had tanked the business, you still would have had to pay them the full seller financed amount.
Yeah, there was no earnout. I bought the business for a set price. The difference that I owed, I would just pay them monthly with a flat interest rate. So once I paid it off, it didn't matter what I made or what I didn't make. So the earnout, they would hold about 25%, around 20% hold back. And then I would, in 15 months, the schools would have to perform for me to get that difference. But mind you, I'm not managing the businesses anymore.
Right. You can't control it.
But we didn't have to go through that process because the EBITDA was just very, very high. So the EBITDA, they calculated, basically, I did the closing 6 months after they gave me the LOI. And the EBITDA was a lot higher then, because again, I was building back the business from COVID, a lot higher than when we initially negotiated.
Yeah, well, that's one thing I talk to clients and definitely people on social media about is a lot of times when you're going up for sale and you start with the LOI, you get so fixated on the sale that you sort of are paying less attention to the business. But it sounds like what you did was focus on making sure that EBITDA kept going up and up and up to be able to negotiate to get the exact number and deal you wanted. I mean, that's phenomenal.
My business, I ran it just like every single day. I did not change a thing of how I managed my business, nor my passion for it, nor my expectation, nor my quality, nor my integrity. Because for me, quality and my kids were more important than any 100%. Amount of money.
100%.
So I didn't change. I managed my business the same way until the day of closing. But nobody knew I was selling.
Right. They didn't know until the end, which is what happens most of the time. Quick question for you. When you came up with your number, how did you come up with that number? Like, did you pick it out of the air of a big number? Did you think about what you needed to launch your next business? How did you come up with the number that you would sell for?
So I kind of knew, I had friends that were selling, and I kind of knew what the EBITDA was like.
Yeah.
The multiples, sorry, what the multiples that they were offering. And I think with the multiple, the estimate that they gave me initially when they were, trying to get me to sell,
Valuation. Yeah.
I came up with a number, and it just had to be the right number for me. So I just kind of like picked it because I knew I was about 25% off with my true EBITDA at the time, and the multiple and the amount that I wanted. But I knew for financial reasons, because after you sell, you get the money, you have to invest the money in order to continue. I knew how much money I needed to live with how much money I needed to live and sustain myself.
Yeah.
So I calculated if I invest this money and I get this return, this 7% return, 6% return, then I'll have this much income in a yearly basis, and I can live off of that without working.
Yeah.
So if it was anything less than the number in my head, it just wasn't worth it for me.
Totally get it. I'm glad you answered that way, because so many people just pick a number because like they think it's like a big random number, but when it's rooted in the reality of like, okay, here's what I'd need to not be able to work, or here's what I'd need in order, and here are the typical multiples. And what I love about you that speaks to what you're doing now, the focus on when you're 20 to 25% off. Okay, well, I need to get my EBITDA here to get to be able to be worth the exact amount I want. I mean, you really did a fabulous job there. And that's what you do now with your EOS coaching, right? Tell us a little bit about what you do now.
So I realized how much I love leading my team, and I saw how much impact not only did it have in my leadership team, the rest of my team, but a ripple effect of that. Right. So I really love to have the quarterly meetings with my staff, the planning meetings with my staff. Carry through this process of EOS, I realized what my why is, and what my why in life, what the reason I was put on this planet is to cause a positive impact on people's lives with a ripple effect. So it's not only in people's lives, but a ripple effect of that extends out. And it's what I did when I was, in my early 20s, that I was an entrepreneur, real estate finance and real estate. Is what I did when I was helping people save their homes, is what I did with childcare, and it's what I did with EOS. I said, this is perfect for me. And I love doing EOS, and I'm seeing the impact not only on one leadership team, but on many. And the stories are just phenomenal. Like I had one of my clients, Yale graduate, has a company with 200 employees. And in we did our annual planning. He started crying. He's like, Jennifer, you have no idea the difference in this business. It bought him more time with his family. He was happier. His team was happier. So I just love it.
Good. That is.
But I just still have the entrepreneurial itch.
Well, I was going to ask you, like, are you, so is this something that you look at, like, I'm going to scale this business now, this EOS consultative and coaching business, or is this a stop before the next entrepreneurial venture?
It's not a stop, but I kind of, I remember that I told you I'm very goal oriented.
Yes.
So I started this, I set myself a goal. I work really hard towards the goal, but I think that I've realized that what I really enjoy is the journey of getting to the goal. Once I get to the goal, that's it. I've lost interest. So I had the goal of making my practice almost full, right? So I'm like 85% full, 85, 90% full. But there's something missing. So my next step is to still get back into business, but at a different capacity. I don't want to run the day to day. I don't want to be responsible for everything. It's like a different chapter in my life, be maybe just a visionary or a board of director, like an owner, giving guidance and helping other businesses scale. But I don't want to get involved in the day to day. And while still doing my EOS, which I love, but I still need that part, that entrepreneurial part, and that goal setting. Because the goals with my clients, they set their goals, they achieve them. But I'm like, I don't.
Right. You're just there cheering them on. That is awesome. Yeah, I totally hear you on that. That is really a very inspiring story of how you launched with very little and were able to turn that into something. Do you believe that when people are starting out, if you're advising somebody who's like in the really early stages, do you think buying an existing business is the way to go, or is it starting something sort of from scratch? If you had to do it all again, would you start from scratch, or did that make it like more either
would
palatable or exciting for you?
definitely buy in an
Buy
existing build.
an
Def-
existing business. Tell me why.
Definitely. So the existing business, it costs a lot more money, but it's already producing. So you save time in seeing returns. And when you're just starting out, you need to see returns as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And then the second business that I bought, luckily it was already built out, but it took me a year. I had to invest. So I had to invest about 150,000 just to maintain the cost. When I was manifesting, because I wanted a child care center, that's when I had kind of lost everything. And a friend of mine, he would build centers, and he owed me money because I had invested in a project.
Yep.
And he just didn't have the money to pay me because everything tanked. He had built up this preschool. Carrie, he literally told me, here, I'll give you the keys to it. He was giving me the preschool in exchange for the money he had owed me. And I didn't take it. And the reason I didn't take it is because I didn't have the reserves at the time. And I knew that I was acquiring a business that was losing money. I just didn't have that.
You weren't able to handle that. Yeah.
I didn't have that. I didn't have those reserves. And at least an existing business, yes, it's costing you money, but you already factored in what it costs you, and you know what it's making you. And if you just put in a lot of effort, you can you can stabilize it where you're not losing money, and you can start making money much faster.
Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's wonderful insights, and you're a real inspiration. I mean, I want to go out and buy a child care center now. It's amazing. Awesome.
Oh my God, it's the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. I can tell you that.
Work. If people want to use your coaching for the EOS stuff, where should they reach out?
Jennifer at theprofitrecipe.com.
Well, you certainly do have the profit recipe for sure.
Yeah. Or they can Google my name. Google under my name, childcare and EOS, and I'm going to come up.
Perfect. Perfect. Thanks, Jennifer.
You're very welcome, Carrie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.